I'm David Woolf from UNH-IOL. I'm going to talk about what is MIPI Alliance doing with regard to proving interoperability testing, as well as conformance testing. And I think we all agree that interoperability and proving it is something that's very important. If products don't work together, people don't want to buy them. If MIPI had a reputation of not being interoperable, people wouldn't want to integrate those components, people wouldn't want to design those components. So it's very important for us from early on to be able to prove that MIPI as a technology, as a suite of technologies, a series of interfaces, is interoperable. If we're able to do that, it's going to encourage people to integrate. It's going to encourage more companies to become involved in MIPI Alliance, more companies to start designing these components. So it's one thing to say that we need to do it. We agree on that. How do we do it? Well, at the IOL, we like to say that there's 4 keys to interoperability. They are the standard, a knowledge center with regard to interoperability and conformance testing. There's technical testing occurring, and there's an interoperability metric. And in the presentation, I'm going to talk about what are each of these things. And if you implement these things, if you implement the keys, you'll be able to prove interoperability. So what exactly do we mean by these 4 things? The standard, a knowledge center, technical testing, and interoperability metric. Well, with regard to the standard, what are we doing? Well, we've had the IOL come in and review the specifications, provide comments on them, and then create a common test specification based on the MIPI Alliance interface specification. So by doing that, we've helped to refine the specification, help to improve the specification, but also provide a common reference for companies within the MIPI Alliance to test against. So that's really kind of the first step in proving interoperability, is having a good specification and then us agreeing on what are we going to test about the specification. The second item is the knowledge center. Now, in order to do that, the test suites are part of that. They are kind of a resource for the industry, a wealth of testing knowledge in one document. In addition to that, we've created some MOI, or method of implementation documents. What that is it takes a specific piece of equipment and it shows you how to implement the tests that are in the test specification document. What are the steps to implementing that? You could think of it almost like a recipe for how to perform those tests. So that's starting to form the basis of a knowledge center, resources for the MIPI community with regard to interoperability testing. Also, we've created some software tools that are available on the MIPI website, that are available to all MIPI members to download and use in their own lab. So that's another resource that's available. We've also created test fixtures. So a common environment for actually connecting these devices. And that's a problem that's unique to MIPI. There isn't a physical connection defined, and that's appropriate for what MIPI is trying to do. But when we're trying to perform interoperability testing, or trying to connect these devices together, if we've all got different physical connectors, we're not going to get anywhere. So one of the things that we've done is provide some reference designs for people in order to use a common connector. And we've recommended people use an SMA connector. We provide some guidelines on how to create the launches for that and the geometries for that, for people to add that onto their board. That third item, that third key, was technical testing. If we want to prove interoperability, well, we need to test for it, and that's occurring right now in a few different forms. One is services that are available at labs like the IOL. The other is interoperability workshops, where we actually sit down as a group of people and connect these devices together and really prove in an open environment that MIPI is in fact interoperable. And I'm going to provide some more details on how we do that and when we've done that a little bit later. So a little bit more on what exactly that test suite document is. This is part of having a solid specification for testing, and part of having a knowledge center for the industry to go through as far as information about testing. Well, what it does is it defines what in a standard needs to be tested, what are the requirements of that standard, and then a high-level algorithm of how to do it. It doesn't tell you how to set up the equipment, but it tells you what needs to happen in the context of the technology in order for you to perform a particular measurement. So for example, if we're talking about a physical layer electrical measurement, it'll describe an algorithm that says cause the device to send a transmission, maybe transition from low power to high speed mode, and then find this point and perform that measurement. So it just gives you an algorithm on how to perform the tests. The other important thing about the test suite document is it's a common reference for the whole industry. So we don't have some companies creating a test spec and saying, well, we're going to test these things because that's what we think is important, and then someone else coming up with something completely different. Instead, we've got a common document that can serve as a reference to everybody so that we can compare things a lot easier. The second item I talked about was the MOI. Again, unlike the test suite, which is not tied to a particular set of equipment, the MOI is tied to a very specific set of equipment. And the nice thing about the MOI and why it's such an important resource for MIPI companies is it's designed for people to take that MOI and then duplicate what it describes in their own lab. So we save a lot of time in doing that. Instead of people trying to figure out these problems completely on their own, completely independently, now we've got a resource that can help guide them. Even if they're very new at MIPI Alliance, this can help them get up and running in their own labs and doing their own testing a lot quicker. I also mentioned the test software. We've created some things for creating reference test patterns. We've got software for doing DeFi electrical measurements. We've got software for using on an oscilloscope to decode the oscilloscope and actually give you a protocol decode for what's on the scope, and some other software that actually does some inspection for you as to whether you're conformant to CSI and DSI. I also mentioned test fixtures. We have a reference termination board that we've had to create. It's something to help with the unique termination environment for MIPI. So that's another resource that we've had to create in order for ourselves to do the testing, but it's something that we've made available to the whole MIPI Alliance, because this is a tool that people are going to need to use in their own labs. It's a problem that people are going to need to solve in their own labs. So this is another thing that we've made available to the MIPI Alliance. We've created a probing board that allows you to connect your product to an oscilloscope or a logic analyzer very easily. And most recently, we created what we call the TLIS board, a transmission line interconnect structure. You might think of it as a worst-case test channel to use when connecting MIPI products together. We've also provided test services and reporting. I've got some examples here of the reports. In fact, later on, when we see the demonstrations outside, you'll see one company actually has one of those reports. And that's what we've been able to provide to the industry. And that's kind of a nice tool for communicating within the industry and to the outside world that this particular product is conformant and interoperable. And the last item is Interop Events. We've done 4 Interop Events so far, 2 for display, 1 for camera, and 1 for Slim Bus. We're planning further Interop Events for this fall. And they're really a nice opportunity for companies to, one, prove that they are interoperable, but also make a lot of nice connections. One of the things that I hear a lot is that people are curious, well, how do I get a sample of this? Or who should I talk to about in this company about getting a sample of that? And at the Interop workshop, people are able to actually sit down, connect their products together, and make contacts. And now they're talking to the right person within that company. And what we've accomplished at the Interop events is actually really impressive. For the first event, a lot of people were wondering, you know, here are all these companies, they're going to come together in Hampshire and try and connect their stuff together. Is it going to work? Or is it just going to be a week of troubleshooting and debug and nothing works? And I'm happy to say that at all of our events, we've been able to kind of refine the process such that all the companies that have come to work, they've been able to connect their stuff together and prove interoperability with at least one other company that was present at the event. So you think of the time and effort that goes into proving interoperability in your own lab. Maybe you have to go to one other company. You've got to have an engineer come to your company. He brings 1 or 2 products from his company. So now here's an opportunity to do all of that work with many more companies in a much condensed period of time. So we've had a lot of success with the Interop events. Some people were amazed that they were able to get their products up and running with a company's product that they've never connected to before, never talked to before, in less than a few hours. So we've had a lot of success doing that, and I hope these future events are a success as well.